You know that deep, soulful, kind of gut-wrenching feeling you get from so much of modern music? Ever wonder where it comes from? Well, today we're going to dive into the incredible, powerful story of the blues. So yeah, let's get right into it.
Wow. I mean, that's one of the most famous lines in music history, right? That feeling of loss, of heartache, that sense that something is just over for good. That right there is the absolute soul of the blues.
So the big question is, where does a sound that powerful, that raw, even begin? To really get it, we have to go back, way back, to a story of unbelievable hardship, but also incredible survival and creativity. Yeah, this story doesn't start in some fancy concert hall or recording studio. It starts in the fields of the American South. And it was born from one of the most brutal chapters in all of human history.
You see, when enslaved people were brought to America from Africa, they carried their culture with them, their music, their religion, their stories. But under the unimaginable cruelty of slavery, those traditions were brutally suppressed or twisted and forced to merge with Western culture. Out of all that suffering, music became something more. It wasn't just entertainment, it was therapy. It was a way to survive, to process pain that most of us can't even fathom. And this sound was so raw, so emotionally honest, that to a lot of outsiders, they just called it the devil's music.
Now, here's a twist you might not expect. Slave owners actually allowed certain kinds of music, work songs. But let's be clear, it wasn't out of kindness, not at all. It was purely practical. That steady rhythm helped coordinate these brutal group tasks, like hammering railroad spikes in the blazing sun. And right there, that was the first faint whisper of what would become the blues.
And the format they used is called call and response. It's a really key piece of this whole puzzle. A leader would sing a line, often just making it up on the spot about the work, the heat, maybe even a subtle jab at the overseers. And then the whole group would sing a line back. Sound familiar? It should. We're basically talking about the great-great-grandfather of freestyle rap. And you can hear that same back-and-forth structure all over pop music today.
Okay, so after emancipation, the music starts to change. It becomes more personal, more individual. Now let's fast forward a few decades. America is plunging into the Great Depression, and this raw, emotional sound starts to find its first real identity.
So I want you to picture the scene. The American South, 1930s. Times are just brutally tough. The whole country's poor, but for African Americans in the rural South, it's a whole other level of hardship. And the music from this time? Well, it sounded exactly like how life felt. It was sparse, it was raw, and it was acoustic.
I mean, nobody had money for fancy instruments. Musicians used whatever they could get their hands on, which usually meant cheap acoustic guitars and harmonicas. Life was a constant hustle. Prohibition was on, so a lot of these bluesmen made their own illegal whiskey, moonshine, to make ends meet. And to get noticed and earn a few bucks, they'd have these musical showdowns, basically battling each other to see who could draw the biggest crowd.
But here's the thing. The blues was never going to stay quiet in the rural South. A huge shift was happening in America, a change that was about to take this acoustic sound, plug it into an amp, and turn the volume way, way up.
This shift was called the Great Migration. Millions of African Americans were leaving the South and heading to the big industrial cities up north, looking for jobs, looking for a better life. And of course, they brought their music with them. But that quiet acoustic sound that worked in the countryside, it just got swallowed up by the noise of the city. To be heard over the traffic and the factories, the blues had to get electric. And the new capital of the blues became Chicago. This is where the sound got louder, tougher, and a whole lot grittier. It wasn't just a change in volume, you know? It was a change in attitude. And there were three absolute kings leading the charge. First up, you got Muddy Waters. He was a former moonshiner from the South who brought that exact same hustle and swagger to the big city. He pretty much became the king of the entire Chicago scene. And of course, every king needs a rival. For Muddy, that was Howlin' Wolf. This guy was a giant of a man with a voice that could literally shake a room. He was Muddy's sworn enemy, and he was famous for stealing his best musicians any chance he got. And rounding out this big three was John Lee Hooker. You could almost call him the original gangster rapper. I mean, he sang songs about being bad like Jesse James, and he built this image of himself as this tough, untouchable guy who didn't answer to anybody.
So, the blues has gone electric. It's taken over Chicago. But believe it or not, its biggest journey was still to come. A trip across the Atlantic Ocean, and then all the way back again.
Okay, get this. After World War II, American soldiers stationed in Britain left their records behind. Young kids in England got a hold of this raw electric sound from Chicago, and it just blew their minds. They started importing these records, and pretty soon you had bands like the Rolling Stones, who, by the way, literally named their band after a Muddy Waters song, creating their own high-energy version of it. And when they brought that sound back to America, it was like a lightning strike. Suddenly, white teenagers were listening, and almost overnight, the blues became the biggest, most important sound on the planet.
All right, so we've followed this sound across decades and continents, but what is it, in the music itself that's just so powerful? To get that, we need to kind of pop the hood and look at the musical blueprint.
At the very heart of almost every single blues song is a simple, repeating chord pattern. It's called the 12-bar blues. The easiest way to think about it is like a little story. The first 4 bars set the scene. They establish the feeling. The next 4 bars introduce a little twist, a change. And the last 4 bars bring it all home. They resolve the tension. It's so simple, but it's incredibly powerful.
12. That's the magic number. It seems almost too simple, doesn't it? But that 12-bar structure is so flexible, so perfect, that it became the actual DNA for rock and roll, for soul music, for jazz, for pretty much everything that came next.
And it's not just the music. The lyrics have a pattern, too. It's called AAB, and it is genius. You say a line, then you say it again, almost like you're trying to convince yourself it's real. That repetition just hammers the feeling home. And then that third line comes in and delivers the punchline, the resolution, usually with a rhyme. It's a structure that doesn't just tell you something, it makes you feel it.
But the real secret sauce, the one ingredient that gives the blues its soul, is the blue note. Okay, think of a piano keyboard. You have the standard Western notes, but the musical scales that came from Africa had notes in between those keys. So when these two styles met, you got this in-between sound that's a little bit bent, a little dirty, a little dissonant. That is the blue note. It is the sound of yearning. It's the sound of pain. It is everything that makes the blues feel like the blues.
So when you lay it all out like this, you can see it. It's a direct, unbroken line. It starts with a call and response work song in a field. That becomes the haunting acoustic guitar of Robert Johnson in the Mississippi Delta. That plugs in and gets loud and tough with Muddy Waters in Chicago. That explodes around the world with the Rolling Stones. And that line, it doesn't stop in the 1960s. It runs right into your headphones, right into the music on your playlist, right now.
So next time you put on your favorite song, I don't care if it's rock, pop, hip-hop, whatever, just listen. Really listen. Because now that you know the blueprint, now that you know the secret code, I guarantee you're going to start hearing the echo of the blues absolutely everywhere.